Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another C++ tutorial, and in this one we're going to cover constructors, destructors, and methods of classes. We're going to go ahead and leave the structure alone for now, but you'll see it again. But let's go ahead and pick on the class data type. So we create a class, and what kind of class should we create now? Let's stick with the person for now. Now, recall that I talked about the default access specifier of a class being private, and you being able to declare public and private, like so. And I'm sure somewhere out there, some of you seem protected, and we'll cover that later, I promise. When I tend to make my classes, I already know that the default access specifier of a class is private, and the reason why it's private is to enforce encapsulation, and that's the whole idea behind accessors and mutators, which is the methods we're going to be picking on. So let's just go ahead and give him a name, and I'm going to name these variables or these members a little bit different, and you'll see why later. And keep in mind, you can actually default assign these in the class declaration, like so, or actually we can do it the more modern way. And then you can say public, and this is where we're going to see our first thing that you kind of caught a glimpse of before a little bit. I called it a method if I recall correctly, and that was incorrect. It's actually a constructor. When you see the class name, like so, this is a constructor. Now, keep in mind, all C++ classes have a built-in constructor and destructor. It just doesn't do a whole lot. It looks something like this. Not exactly, but something like it. So, in this one, we're going to go ahead and define our own what's default constructor, so to speak. And then we're going to have another constructor that essentially takes in a string, or takes in a name and an age. Now, for now, we'll just leave the string name and strings. Look at me go. Age. And you're probably already seeing the reason behind the naming convention. And I'll once again get to that in just a second. So let's go ahead and define our destructor. And I can probably assure you there's not going to be much going on here. In fact, no, I better go ahead and define it manually. So let's go ahead and define these constructors as well as that destructor before we get into the methods. So the way we do that is we need to utilize what's known as the scope resolution operator for that class. Person, and it's 2 colons. We'll just say person once again, empty parameters, and here goes our default constructor. Now technically we don't need a default constructor because we already have it defaultly assigned, but there may be other things that you need to do. In this case, I'm just going to throw an output statement in here. I'm going to say person has been defaultly constructed in Dell. Okay, and that's all it's going to do. Now, here's the other one. We'll say string name and age. And there we are. And we'll say underscore name, assigned name, underscore age is assigned age. Now, what if we didn't use that underscore? How would it know the difference between the private members that we're assigning and the parameters that are being passed? And yes, I did say accessing the private members because we're still within the class. In our methods, So we can access these anytime we want, as long as we stay within the class. We just can't access them from main. So keep that in mind, guys. So how do we handle if our private members are the same name as our parameters or arguments, or whichever one? I'm goofy headed as right now. It doesn't even matter at this point. Anyway, what we can use is the keyword called this. And essentially, this is a special type of keyword. It's a pointer, actually, that points to the very class you're working in. This one. So we will use an arrow, because it is a pointer. Name is assigned name. And then we'll do the same thing with age. And ta-da! But it's good practice, though, to do things. I mean, you can do this any way you want, but I just use an underscore for my private private members. That way I can just say name, age, age. So you can do it any way you want, guys. It's whatever you're comfortable with. And just for grins and smiles, I'll have me an output statement here and say person with name of name at age has been created or constructed. I probably should put like periods at the end of those, but I just don't care. So let's go ahead and tackle the destructor. Whoops. And we'll just throw an output statement here for now. Until we get into memory allocation within classes, the constructor, we're kind of going to ignore it for the most part. Let's see, person has been deconstructed. Alright, so now we've seen this. So let's go ahead and say person A and we're going to have to use, for now, the constructor that takes in a string and an age. The reason why is we haven't defined any methods to directly access those private members. So we'll just say person A, we'll just do this here, and person B, this is where we'll do it. Call it Billy, I guess. And he's 5. There we are. Person has been defaultly constructed. Person with the name of Billy at age 5 has been constructed, and deconstructed. So cool. So all that's working as it should. But we really want to give this person a name and an age, right? So we're going to have to use an accessor and a mutator to be able to output all that stuff. So the way we do that is typically an accessor will return the same type that you're accessing, which in case we'll start with the name, it'll return a string. And you can call it name or get name, whatever. Typically it doesn't take any parameters unless you need it, but there is a difference. You want to really make sure that the string returned is a constant. You don't want that changed. You don't want to accidentally make or have a program have the ability to change the value if all you're doing is accessing. It makes no sense. So this will ensure that this doesn't get changed. That makes sense? Whereas if you threw it out here, it would affect the string being returned. And use it if you have to, but that would be interesting. So we'll do the same thing with age. Int get age const, so it can't get changed. But the ones we do want to do the changing are the mutators. These typically return voids. Again, it depends on your use cases and such. And in this case, I'm just going to use the word set, like set name, and we'll say string name. Once again, void set age and age. And before we go any further, let me touch base on this. You've seen me do things a little bit differently in the functions video using a const reference. If I recall correctly, there's a reason why I'm doing it this way, and it's going to be something that I actually overlooked, but I didn't worry too much about it because I knew we could actually tackle it while we're tackling classes. So bear with me. We won't do it in this video. It'll probably be the next one, maybe. But keep in mind that there's a reason why I'm doing this. So if somebody's frowning out there saying, why ain't you doing a const reference? Well, just bear with me. I've got a plan. There's a method of my just jeez. Okay. Let's go ahead and define them. So get name should be very simple. You want to don't forget that const. That is not it, you jackwagon. But I did forget the return type, didn't I? Okay, you got to see me make an ass of myself right there. That's okay though. We all have asses. But we simply say return name. That's all an accessor does. It just returns the value of whatever it's accessing. There's no need to change it. So we'll say int person get age. Do not forget the const. Return age. Voila. And now for our mutators, void set name and as you can imagine, voila. So now we have our accessors and mutators. Now there might be some instances, there are specific instances where, yeah, it may look something like this, but you may have to do a little bit of editing, or you may have to do a little bit of readjusting to the data to make it readable or something like that. That would be a good use case as to why to use an accessors and mutators. If you just don't want to return the raw data, you've got to do some work to it before you can return it. Regardless, now we can set a name and age to that person. So we'll say a dot set name. We'll call this, I don't know, Angela. That's a pretty name. And then a dot set age. Why did I put a string? 10. Make her 10. Alright. Of course there won't be any output. So regardless, we can still have output. You can say person, oh, what is wrong with me? Person a for person with name a dot get name, no, name at age. Yeah, now you can say get age. Yeah, so essentially we kind of cheated a little bit there. But it just shows that the Mother of Georgia. Alright, it just shows, it's going to show off that we can actually modify the data with accessors and mutators, and this is how we can do it. So there we go. Person with name Angela at age 10 has been constructed. Or we could have went to the accessors and mutators and with cout statements and all that. But believe it or not, I have done what I said I was going to do. We've talked about constructors, destructors, which once again, we won't really get into that too hot and heavy until we get into memory allocation within classes. It's coming sooner than you think, guys. And then we also talked about accessors, getters, whatever you want to call it, mutators, setters, whatever. So we talked about those. We talked about the scope resolution operator pertaining to the class. Naming conventions, which that's on you guys. It's however you want to do it. And we will talk about this in the next video as to why really this isn't a good thing to do. So guys, make sure and get plenty of practice in the use cases of C++ classes, because there are many different things you can create with a class. There are many things to learn. There's still things I'm learning about classes. And I've been coding, let's see, I'm 36 years old, and I've been coding in C++ since I was 14 years old. And I'm still learning new things about classes here and there. So you never run out of things to learn. You always find new ways to do things. So practice. Get to know one another, share notes, and learn. Enlighten your minds. So guys, if you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. If I made any mistakes, I was a little bit all over the place, so I could have. Who knows? Please leave it in the comments below. I ain't scared. And guys, I definitely appreciate you watching, and happy coding!